Alright, it's time for another update and forecast on the Dixie Fire, and I'm going to switch it up for the format on this one. I'm going to try to do a very quick, concise update and forecast covering the key numbers on the Dixie Fire, like acreage burned, structures destroyed. We're also going to take a quick look at the thunderstorms that appear to be going over the Dixie Fire right now, and then we'll also look at the fire weather forecast to see how conditions might be changing on the Dixie Fire over the next couple of days, and we'll make a prediction over whether we think things will get worse or possibly better. But just looking at the satellite imagery right now, you can actually see those thunderstorms coming through Northern California that we've been talking about for the last couple of days. Again, it was kind of a mystery whether we actually would get some thunderstorms, but you can see this large strip of thunderstorms coming through NorCal right there, and you can also see how it's interacting with the Dixie Fire. Early this morning, we had some very thick smoke over the Dixie Fire, so it moderated our fire behavior, but it looks like as those thunderstorms have come through, they've brought some gusty, erratic winds with them, and you can see a large smoke plume starting to pop off on the northern edge of the Dixie Fire. Now, one other way to actually see that thunderstorm coming through, we'll be able to change it up here and zoom in. It's this one on the southern edge that went directly over the Dixie Fire, and I was seeing a number of tweets that we were getting some gusty outflow winds as that thunderstorm went over. Now, I think this imagery basically sums up the story for the Dixie Fire throughout the day today. We had a lot of smoke early that moderated our conditions earlier in the day, and then you'll see that smoke start to clear, a couple of those thunderstorms coming through on the horizon, and then there's one moment in there you actually see some raindrops on the camera. So that is actually some great news. That I was reading some other reports that we were seeing some rainfall on the Dixie Fire as these thunderstorms came through. So looks like we're getting both of those aspects that we were talking about that you get with thunderstorms on a fire, where the good news is you can get some moisture, some cloud cover, and possibly even some rainfall like we're seeing on that camera. And the bad news is you can get some gusty, erratic winds and the possibility of some new lightning fire starts. And it looks like those winds have impacted the Dixie Fire as well, as we do have a large smoke plume coming up over the last hour, and especially on the northern edge of the fire. So if we actually want to look at where some of the hotspots were yesterday, where we've seen a lot of our growth recently, most of that activity has been happening on the northeastern section of the fire. That was the part of the fire that was glowing red hot yesterday. We had a huge pyrocumulus cloud coming off of it, but overall over the last few days, throughout most of the day, we've had moderated conditions because the smoke has been so thick, it's been keeping the temperatures and the winds down. But the smoke started to clear today, and then we also have those thunderstorms coming in right now, so much different conditions right now than we have been having over the last few days. Key differences there: the smoke is cleared, and we also have some thunderstorms coming through. Only time will tell if those thunderstorms end up being a good thing because of the potential rainfall that it brings to the fire, or a bad thing because of those gusty, erratic winds that can be associated with thunderstorms on a wildfire. So just zooming in here, there's a few things I want to point out. One is the fact that we're actually seeing less hotspots in this area around Westwood and the east shore of Lake Almanor. Still have some heat right there, but certainly less than we've seen in the past. So I would say that's some good news. And looking at a containment map, it doesn't show it on this, but basically this entire southern edge of the Dixie Fire is completely contained at this point, going from this western edge here all the way around, and then north of Quincy as well, we have that black line which represents containment. So we're looking good on the southern edge. Now, where we've had the most growth recently, I'll turn the structures off for 1 second, is on that northern edge and the northeastern edge, as that's just been fueled by those southwesterly winds in the afternoon, but especially on this northeastern edge. And I think that might be the key concern to watch as we move forward. The main reason for that is over the last few days, that has been the part of the fire that's consistently been burning the hottest, fueled by those southwesterly winds. And if you look at the structures around this area, we still have quite a ways to go, but we do have a number of cities just to the northeast of there. Looks like it's about 5 to 8 miles away at this point. We have Susanville, Johnsonville, Janesville, and Buntingville. So the fire has continuously been moving up to the northeast, so that's why that's the key area I've been watching over the last few days. Now, one good news I will say is if we turn on fire history, you can see where the sheep fire was in 2020, and this has actually been playing a huge role in keeping the behavior down on the Dixie Fire. You can see that right when the Dixie Fire comes up to the sheep fire burn scar, basically stops in its tracks. Two possible reasons for that. One, a large amount of the fuels in this area could have been or were removed by the sheep fire, and in some situations they're able to reuse some of the containment lines as well. So great news for this area of the Dixie Fire where it's not seeing any activity as it reaches that burn scar. And that's also good news for places like Susanville because you have that nice boundary between you and the fire where a lot of those fuels have been cleared out, and we've already seen that those fuels have been cleared out enough to diminish fire activity. But you can see that because of that burn scar right there, the fire is basically split in two on this northeastern section, half of it going up towards the north and half of it wrapping around to the northeast right here. So again, that I would say is my key concern going forward, because you can see that we have a number of other cities right there. We have Janesville and Buntingville, and looking at that map, they aren't protected by the sheep fire. Now, with that being said, there is still quite a bit of distance between them and where the fire actually is, and I do know CAL FIRE has been positioning lots of resources in this area to work on containment lines and then contingency lines and just lots of resources to make sure that fire doesn't push too far to the northeast. Now, one thing we actually can do is you can see where all those hotspots were yesterday. We can turn on the live hotspots and see how far it's moved throughout the day today. So if we go back to the perimeter, try to keep an eye, it looks like most of those hotspots were right about there. So keep an eye on that spot. We'll switch it to the live imagery, and it looks like if we were to draw a line between where those hotspots were yesterday and the extent of where they're reaching now, looks like it has grown about maybe 3 miles on that northeastern section over the last 24 hours. Again, say that with some hesitation because a lot of times the satellite data can be a bit fuzzy as it is picking up these heat signatures from space. But then one other thing we can do with the measuring tool is measure how far from those hotspots to areas like Janesville, and it looks like we still have about 6 miles to go. And again, CAL FIRE was positioning a large amount of resources in that area, but because of those southwesterly winds in the afternoons, that will continue to be the area of the fire that I watch the closest. So when it comes to all the updated numbers for the Dixie Fire, you can see we're up to 510,000 acres with 30% containment. There are still a large number of evacuation orders changing every day, and I purposely don't try to keep track of those because I put the links in the description, and it's always better for you to get that kind of information straight from the source to make sure that it's the most recent information that has been put out. Now, with that acreage burn number, you can see that we are up to the number 2 largest wildfire in the history of California, largest single wildfire, as the August complex was where a number of fires all came together, and we have officially crossed the 500,000 acreage burn mark. Now, the other unfortunate number that's been coming through over the last few days is our structures destroyed is up to 1,109, and we do still have some data coming back from the damage assessment teams that have been going into some of the areas that have been impacted by the Dixie Fire. Now, you can see most of those structures destroyed, while they are scattered throughout various parts of the Dixie Fire. Most of that is in the Canyon Dam area, where you see a large percentage of those structures in that red color. Red means the structure is destroyed, black means there's no damage, and then even more structures in the Greenville area. So that was a number of days ago, and a lot of those recent increases in the structures destroyed number has just been from the information finally coming back from those damage assessment teams. But I put the link in the description for this map right here, so you can actually go in, and in some cases you can even click on the structure itself to see photos and images of what the areas in Greensville or Canyon Dam or any of the structures that have been destroyed actually look like because of the Dixie Fire. Now, one thing I will say, as always, my thoughts and prayers go out to everybody who has been affected by this wildfire, and it will eventually come to an end. It seems like it's just never going to come to an end, but we did get through 2020, so we will eventually be able to get through 2021 as well. So the big question mark moving forward has to do with the fire weather forecast, because we have seen some major shifts in the weather pattern over us. There was a number of days where we had a nice trough coming through Washington, and that cooled our temperatures down, allowed a lot of that smoke just to sit over us, and we had calmer fire behavior. But we've certainly shifted over the last 24 hours, and it looks like we'll continue to shift in our weather pattern over the next 24 hours. You can see the basic pattern driving weather over the west right now is this large ridge and high pressure system. With that, you get much hotter conditions, so we're in the mid to high 90s over the Dixie Fire, and with a ridge like that, you also get very dry air. So at the surface, that's basically what we look like, where our relative humidity is in the low teens or the single digits. But if we keep clicking through here, you'll be able to see that there are some periods where you get these blasts of moisture in the upper atmosphere, and that is what's creating that thunderstorm threat, or not really a threat anymore. You could actually just say that's what's creating the thunderstorms that are currently going over the Dixie Fire right now. One, bringing some rainfall, which is the good news. We actually saw some of those drops on the camera, but also bringing some of those gusty, erratic winds. As you can see, a large smoke plume is currently popping up on the northern edge of the fire, fanned by some of those thunderstorm winds. So if we actually want to see those thunderstorms as they come through, started at about 2 p.m., and then it's really picked up over the last few hours. It looks like it'll start to die down as we get later into the evening. And then tomorrow afternoon, it looks like there's some potential for thunderstorms again, but I'd say diminished potential when compared to what we're seeing over the Dixie Fire as of right now. So I think this basically sums up what's going on. We'll mostly focus on tomorrow, but one thing I will point out still going on today is we do still have that thunderstorm potential until it says about 10 p.m. tonight. There's still a 10 to 20% chance of those thunderstorms going through. Then when we look at the forecast for tomorrow, I would say there's some good and some bad news. The bad news is that we still have very warm conditions. We're in the mid 90s. The good news is we're not seeing those 25 to 35 mile per hour wind gusts like we were seeing when that trough came through and we had the red flag warning. But if some thunderstorms do come through tomorrow, what will happen is what's happening right now on the Dixie Fire, where around those thunderstorms you get some gusty, erratic winds up to 35 to 40 miles per hour. Now it does look like our relative humidity is coming up somewhat throughout the day tomorrow, going up to about 20%, which is higher than in previous days, which is most likely associated with some of that increased cloud cover and some of that same moisture that is causing those thunderstorms. But the bad news for Saturday is it looks like we're actually going to be getting warmer, getting up into the high 90s. Winds will remain moderate, which is good news, but then we'll start to see some dry air again, getting relative humidity back into the teens. So I think this basically sums up everything I was just saying. High risk burn environment due to potential thunderstorms in the region. You could take out that word potential now because the thunderstorms are over the Dixie Fire. Temperatures will be in the 100s today and will heat up over the next few operational periods. So certainly going to have to watch out for Saturday because of the increase in temperatures and the drop in relative humidity. And then we'll also have to keep a close eye on the Dixie Fire over the next few hours as it continues to be impacted by those thunderstorms. And then we'll keep a close eye on it tomorrow afternoon as well, because while National Weather Service isn't showing the possibility of thunderstorms, some of that moisture is still in the region, so we'll have to keep an eye out for it. So as always, if you live around the Dixie Fire, I put the links in the description for all the various evacuation warnings that are in place, so you can go there to get the information straight from the source. Throughout this video, my main goal was just to have a very concise report about all the most important information to know about the Dixie Fire as of right now. So I'm actually going to wrap up this video, and then I'm going to come back on in about 10 to 15 minutes, and we'll do one of those more classic follow the conditions in real time, question and answer, where I look at the live chat, try to answer your guys' questions, and we just follow it together over the next hour or two. So hopefully this video is helpful, and I'll see you guys in about 10 to 15 minutes. Thank you for watching.